Hey guys, how's it going? Let's talk for a minute about recovery equipment today. Recovery equipment is the subject of the day. So, if you have an M35, which most of you do if you're watching my channel, some of you have 5 ton Humvees, whatnot, but um, you need to remember that your recovery equipment, it may only be useful every once in a great while. You may only ever need it once. You may never need it, but when you do need it, you gotta have it, and it's got to be in good shape, right? So if you got a winch, you want to make sure that your winch and your cable is in good condition. If your cable is rusty, or if it's been broken, or it has kinks or flat spots in it, it may be costly, but you definitely want to replace it, okay? Because the one time when you really need it, when you're stuck out there, maybe by yourself or maybe with a couple of friends that needed you to come help them, and then you got stuck, and that winch cable snaps, what are you going to do then? It's going to be very costly or very difficult to get yourself recovered after that. A new winch cable is going to probably be a few $100, but just think of it as an investment, right? The same thing with your hook and your chain. If you've got a chain and hook equipped on your winch cable, make sure all your connection points are in good shape. You don't want those replaceable hammer together links in that. That's asking to come apart and hurt somebody or go through your windshield or your radiator. Want to try to avoid that stuff. So make sure your recovery equipment, no matter what it is, if you've got a snatch block, make sure the pulley is free. Do some PMCS on it. Every year or two, break it out. Make sure the sheave actually turns and it's not rusted solid. Let's see, if you are looking for recovery equipment and specifically a snatch block, make sure that it's the right one for the cable size and the rating that you need. You do not want to use a snatch block with a 5/8 sheave pulley. The pulley on a snatch block is called the sheave, Sheave. You want to make sure that if you've got 1/2 inch cable, your sheave is also made for 1/2 inch cable. If it's too thin, it'll cut into the cable as you put stress on it and cause the cable to snap. And if it's too wide, if you've got, say, a sheave with a 5 that's meant for 5/8 cable and you run a 1/2 inch cable through it, when you really get a strain on it, that cable will flatten out on the uphill side of that pulley. And when it flattens out, it weakens and it will snap right there. And you really don't want a 20-pound snatch block flying one direction at high velocity and a bunch of 1/2 inch cable flying another direction at high velocity. It's a recipe for disaster. So try to stay away from the Chinese stuff. Most of it, like, it may be the right size, like it may be meant for 1/2 inch cable or 1/2 inch rope, but the rating is probably not going to be what you need. And even if it is rated for what you need or says it's rated for what you need, are you going to trust that Chinesium when it comes down to your safety and the safety of those around you and your truck? So make sure that's in good shape. If you have gone to synthetic rope instead of cable, remember that UV light affects that synthetic rope, whereas it doesn't really with cable. Now, cable is susceptible to rust over time. Synthetic rope is susceptible to the environment. Sunlight degrades it very quickly. In a couple of years, it can degrade it to where it'll just come apart like paper. So if you're running rope, it's safer by a long shot. If it snaps, it's not going to kill you. It's not going to kill anybody, as long as there's no steel hardware on that rope. I've seen some guys that have put the original chain and hook from their PTO winch off their deuce on the end of a synthetic winch rope, and that's fine as long as you are careful with it. You dampen it, don't hook it back to itself. If you hook back to rope and most cable even, that can cause it to snap because you put all the stress of that little bitty point of the hook on that cable. It kinks it and it can cut through, snap it. But so if you're going to run a synthetic winch rope, make sure you have some kind of drum cover. Keep the winch rope out of the sun. That's really the only thing that bothers them. That and getting like loose sand in the fibers of the rope itself. It acts just like grinding compound. It'll actually grind up the fibers of the rope inside of it. So try to keep your winch cable and rope clean, obviously. Your winch cables, if you've still got that equipped, it's good practice every year or so, especially if you've got your truck out in the weather, stored out in the weather, not undercover in a shop or something. Unspool your cable off the drum and wipe it down with a rag and some grease. It doesn't matter what kind of grease. You can use axle grease or lithium grease or moly grease or old-fashioned GAA. It doesn't matter. But you want to get some kind of corrosion protection in that cable. Now originally the cable is a fiber cord cable, and over many years that petroleum product will degrade the fiber core, which also contributes to weakening of the cable. So it's kind of a win-lose thing, right? If you keep your cable greased, and you don't have to heavily grease it, just enough that it's not going to rust, going to get surface rust all over it. Keep it greased and keep it out of the weather, keep it out of the water, rain. It'll last longest, but fiber core cable does have a working lifespan. So it's an insurance policy, man. It's an investment. Take care of your stuff and it'll take care of you, but it does have a lifespan. Now your smaller cable, like on your 9,000 pound civilian type winches, they don't all have a fiber core, so they're not susceptible to that, but our winches are. And the fiber core makes them more flexible, more easy to work with, which is good when you have a 1/2 inch or 5/8 or 3/4 inch, like on the back of the record cable. So it's necessary, but also they all have their downfalls. If you have your Pioneer toolkit on your truck, your Pickmatic, your shovel, and your axe, check those every once in a while. Make sure the handles aren't rotten. Believe me, I know from experience, it's the worst damn thing in the world to get out there stuck and need to dig part of one of your axles out or a couple of your axles out or whatever, and the handle of your shovel breaks off. It sucks. Most of these Pioneer tools that you get on the trucks, they are decades old, and they've been out in the weather a lot, and they may look fine, but once you actually start using them and put a little bit of pressure on them, the first time you stick that spade in the ground, put your foot on it and try to take a scoop of dirt, it snaps off right at the spade, the tip, or where the handle goes into the tip. So just check that. Put a little bit of stress on it, put it in a vise or under something heavy and just push on it and see if you hear any crackling. If you do, and it may be time to replace your shovel. The same with the axe. You can do the same way. Put the axe head in a vise or something and pull on the handle sideways. Not too hard. You're not trying to break it, but just listen. See if you feel or hear anything that doesn't feel right. The Pickmatics are pretty self-explanatory. If you pick up the handle and it feels light, like obviously super dried out wood, or if you can see just by looking at it that the grains have separated and it's dried out over many years, just go get you a new Pickmatic handle. You can find them at the hardware stores. They're not expensive, and you may think, yeah, it looks cool on the side of the truck, but you'll never need it. But that's not necessarily the case. Nobody ever plans on getting stuck until they get stuck, right? Even when you go out playing in the mud and you've been there before and you've never gotten stuck, sometimes stuff happens, and if any of you guys are like me, you have a habit of going out and doing this stuff on your own, sometimes in the middle of the night. Now, I haven't really done that a lot since my younger years, but I remember, I remember what a pain this can be, and trying to find somebody else that can come help get you out. It's never good. So it's always best to stay self-sufficient, keep your recovery gear in good shape, and just be careful. Uh, Keeping your recovery gear in good shape is all about safety, right? You don't want to hurt yourself or others, as always. So that's it. That's all I got for you today, guys. Take care.